Hello, everyone. I am Erin Meyer. I'm the Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at UC Merced. Today, we are so happy to have a bunch of panelists here to talk about the film Better Together and to celebrate Earth Day. Earth Day is tomorrow, the 22nd. Really, I think every day is Earth Day, or at least I celebrate it every day. And so I'm so happy to introduce Guillermo, and Guillermo is going to then introduce some of our panelists, and we're going to talk all about the Earth and other fun stuff. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Guillermo Ortiz. I'm the Sustainability and Diversity Educational Programs Manager here at UC Merced in the Office of Sustainability. I have the pleasure to be your moderator for the panel today. And I want to start with introducing some of our guests, and I will allow them to kind of introduce themselves after that. But we're going to first start here with Nancy Black, producer on the Better Together film. Nancy, thank you for joining us. Could you feel free to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Nancy Black. I co-founded Mercury Press International with my husband, the director of the film, Isaac Hernandez, in 1991. And we've been producing journalism and films since then. And this is our first feature documentary, and we are honored to be here with you today. Isaac,
thank you. Yeah, Mr. Hernandez, please feel free.
I was going to say Mr. Hernandez to you, but never mind. I'm happy to have two Marks here with a C, and Mark McGuinness was the one that inspired me to make this film. When I met him, and I really wanted to make a film about him, and Mark Citillo is actually made an effort to be here because he's trying to save the world right now. And he'll talk about it in a minute. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I'm from Spain, if you haven't figured out where my accent is from. And I'm happy to be here. And I love telling stories. And I'll look forward to hear what everybody has to say.
And he's getting a bridge. That's why he's missing his front two teeth. Oh. In case people were wondering.
Oh.
Give him a smile, Isaac.
No one noticed.
I didn't notice. No.
Yeah, and Mark McGuinness, feel free to introduce yourself next.
Hi, I'm Mark McGuinness, and I love Isaac and Mark. They're dear friends. I love this movie too. And I met Nancy and Isaac early on in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gee, it's been a while. I came to Santa Barbara after the oil spill. I've been involved in the environmental movement since. I've been a colleague of Mark Citillo for many years. He's my lawyer. He's handled an important case for me. Great lawyer. And I just love to be around these creative people, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Mark. And then Mark Citillo, feel free to introduce yourself, and feel free after your introduction to kind of share with the work that you're working on right now.
Well, thank you, Guillermo, and thanks everybody. I'm going to try this with video on, but if my voice starts to break up, I'm going to look to Nancy Black to give me the sign, and I'll cut off my video because I think my voice hopefully will be more important. Thanks to everybody for being here. I am a public interest environmental lawyer, and I was lucky enough to be able to come to Santa Barbara, having earned my law degree, and connect with an organization that Mark McGuinness was one of the initial founders of, along with Selma Rubin, who was profiled prominently in Better Together. And I feel like I am a manifestation of their intentions and the intentions about a community wanting to take control of its destiny. And Santa Barbara has always been a really special place because it's beautiful and it's desirable to be here. So the developers feel like this is a really good place to come and make some money. And the community has felt like, no, these are our lands. This is these are resources. This is the spirit and culture of our community. So you don't come in here and do that. And I learned that from Selma. I think I really have really learned it from the entire community. But Selma was the one who, for me, I mean, she gave me a job. She hired me literally and brought me to Santa Barbara and gave me the opportunity to really work as a community advocate for protecting the resources and the resources that don't have a voice, and for the other parts of the community that don't have a voice and that need representation, and both advocacy before city councils and county supervisors and state governments, and the federal government, and if necessary, into court. So it's been my privilege to be able to work for over 30 years in these kinds of issues and to try and help keep our community to be something that makes it really special. And that part is not special to Santa Barbara. That, I think, is something that's present in every community, that everybody that connects with the place that they're at and the families that have been there for generations, or the families that just moved in last week, that this is something that we as Earth stewards care about. And for many of us, it's a calling and a directive. We don't really have an option about this. These are things that really matter to all of us. So Santa Barbara, as I said, has had a long history, and I'm gonna, one of the things that I'm working on right now, as Isaac mentioned, is a campaign. I'm going to grab the screen for a second here. And we're up, there we go. Okay. And show you, this is part of the materials that we put together for this Foothills Forever campaign. And it really, this particular slide, I think, builds upon this notion that I wanted to share with the folks that are assembled here, is this is something that Santa Barbara as a community has done, and it's something that every community does. Here in Santa Barbara, because the land is so desirable for development, and there's so much money involved, you get a much more intense nature of conflict as developers come in and they try and, as you saw with Selma and developer Berman trying to buy up the Gaviota Coast and change the zoning. Those kinds of outlandish tactics are brought here because there's so much money. But this slide shows just some of the projects and properties that we've all been involved in, going back to 1960, Shoreline Park on the coast, 96, the Douglas Family Preserve, another coastal bluff parcel where a senior facility was proposed, the Carpinteria Bluffs, which has also had a big hotel proposed on it, this Elwood Sperling Preserve, an area where a residential development was proposed, the Hot Springs Canyon up in the foothills above Montecito, Veronica Meadows in 2015, an area where we saved these open space lands next to a creek, next to a county park, and adjacent to other open space areas, including the Douglas Family Preserve and the Ealings Preserve that had been previously saved. And now here we are in 2021, trying to save the San Marcos foothills. So the San Marcos foothills, just for a little perspective, this is a map that shows the western edge of Santa Barbara on the south coast. The city of Santa Barbara is just has some little portions on the over here on the right-hand side as you're looking at the screen, but then we get into an unincorporated area. This road, Highway 101, is the interstate that goes right through the middle of Santa Barbara. 154 has been designated as the Chumash Highway on behalf of the native peoples of this area. There were 12 separate bands of Chumash Indians that each spoke their own independent language, not dialects, but actually each of these bands for this Southern California region had separate languages that were documented by some of the early anthropologists that recorded those and made the notes and preserved a lot of their culture that in a way that now as we're coming back to a recognition of the importance of preserving that culture. And of course, all those families that have been fighting for so many generations to hold their identity in front of them and keep it together. I'm hoping that we're seeing a renaissance of the collective community's recognition of the importance of these folks, the Native Americans from our community, or from, and every community in our country has indigenous people that live there. And so sometimes it's important for us to try and find a way to recognize that and bring that forward. It's one of the reasons why we want to try and save the Foothills Forever parcel. This map gives you a little bit of an indication of where it is. I have the whole regional map, but just north of here, we go into the National Forest for the Los Padres National Forest. The green area is 200 acres of land that was saved 15 years ago as part of an effort by the community to preserve that. And this red part was a sacrifice zone for that. It was approved for development. And now we managed to reach an agreement with the developer to purchase the property at just under the amount that he expected he would earn if he developed it. But we only had 90 days to be able to preserve it. We're currently in about the day, I'm looking at about the 40th day. So we have 50 more days. We have raised over $7.5 million, and we still have to raise another $12.5 million. The good news is that here in Santa Barbara, there are people with considerable resources who have the interest in stepping up to save properties like this. And we are literally praying for a miracle here of having somebody step up and make a significant 7-figure gift, millions of dollars, or even a $10 million gift. That would just push us right over the line. Normally, you don't need numbers like that when you're trying to save open space lands in your community, but it's important to, when you have an opportunity to take yourself to take advantage of it and to try and bring your community along. So that's in a nutshell what we've been trying to accomplish here with the Save the San Marcos Foothills and the Foothills Forever campaign. So I will hang around for some questions if I can. I need to move on and get on to some other aspects of saving the Foothills. But I appreciate everybody's attention and the opportunity here from Isaac, Nancy, Guillermo, and Aaron, for Mark and I to be able to be here and share this with you. So thank you and happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark, thank you for so much for the presentation and kind of highlighting the work that you're doing right now. Folks, if you have a question for Mark, feel free to throw it in the chat while he still has some time with us. But if not, check out the links that are being posted right now, foothillsforever.org, to learn more about the work that's being conducted. But with that, I'll turn to the rest of our panelists, and really for the folks on the call, the film that we're discussing is Better Together, really covering the 1969 Union Oil blowout, which mobilized the Santa Barbara community to fight for the environment and inspired a tremendous amount of action, not only in California and in Santa Barbara, but around the country as well, spurring things like the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as one of the first interdisciplinary environmental studies programs here in the United States. And one of the questions I had really coming across and watching the film, Isaac and Nancy, if you can answer this for me, is, this is a moment, a defining moment here in the United States in terms of environmental history. What was the impetus for covering this story, and in particular the emphasis on community action, which I felt permeated throughout the film?
You want to take
that? Well, it's for me, not being from Santa Barbara, I don't know if Nancy, why, maybe you need to mute yourself. This is community. It's what came to me. I mean, what welcomed me to Santa Barbara was the community, and so it was a very depressing film to make because it's dealing with very heavy. I mean, there's a debris flow, there's climate change, there's species that are becoming extinct. So over the months, the film evolved in many different directions, but community was really what brought us. It was basically a paying homage to the people before me that made Santa Barbara what it is. And the more I dug into making the film, the more I realized that I didn't have a right to be in despair despite all of these bad things, because all these people had fought for me to have what I have now, and what was there was to continue fighting. And that's why I wanted to invite Mark, because this is like a real time continue fighting, you know, that's continue, don't sleep in your laurels, because there is not time. So, and I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. Nancy, do you have a perspective you'd like to add on to that?
Well, you know, we started making this film out of conversation with Mark McGinnis about Earth Day and how that all came to be. And, you know, originally wanting to correct the record on Wikipedia, which didn't list the Santa Barbara oil blowout, just barely in passing. So, you know, out of wanting to kind of set the record straight, we began this conversation, and the more we dug into it, the more interesting and the story got developed. Well, as we were doing that, we had the Thomas Fire. It occurred while we were putting this film together, and everybody in town was evacuated. And what we saw was our community coming together yet again. And it just became an integral part of the story, how we have evolved to have some strong networks for resilience, new community education and outreach offices, a new communications department that's part of the police and fire infrastructure that now sends reverse calls if you need to, you know, get up and move. Like, we've just developed ourselves as a community to be able to move quickly in the case of fire. And it all goes back, when you're looking at the history, it all goes back to this, you know, foundational event that, you know, affected not just our community, but rippled around the world, as Earth Day, I think, is the largest ever gathering of people all at one place, all at one time for the same thing. I don't know if that's how you say it, but I know that it's an annual event that has the largest participation on the planet. And, you know, I'm honored to be here with Mark McGinnis, who was one of the people who not only, you know, got that first ball rolling, was here to, you know, begin the concept of environmental law, or work with people who were doing that. And also was one of the earliest founders of the environmental science program that you mentioned earlier at University of California, that you guys are now kind of related to, right? I believe that you're kind of part of that web. So I didn't know if your students knew that Mark is one of those original professors who began kind of crafting and molding and teaching environmental law when it was, you know, and even making it as a concept. It was something that it didn't exist before the oil spill. There was no, I think the Barry says it well in the film, like, you know, it was $150 fine.
Absolutely. See, I remember hearing that $150 fine. I'm just thinking of the just absolutely catastrophic damage caused to the area, and just how that was woefully inappropriate in terms of accountability placed on these companies. And Mark, I do want to talk to you. I know, so I did my undergrad at Johns Hopkins University in global environmental change and sustainability. And I would be remiss to say that I don't think a major like that would exist if it wasn't for efforts like yourself. So can you kind of talk about that activism seeing these events take place and then deciding that there needs to be an educational, not only awareness in talking to people and understanding that, but also a better focus in academia about how to study these issues and how to actually take that science and make it digestible and relatable for activism to occur. I think that would be really interesting to hear about.
Well, let's see. On Christmas Eve, 1968, the Apollo 8 astronauts were circling the moon, and they had an onboard camera, which was shooting the lunar surface, and they were in search of a good landing spot for the first landing that was planned for 1969. And as they were, and by the way, there's a great simulation of this. If you just look up Apollo 8 simulation on your browser, it'll take you to this great scene inside the space capsule. The voices are actual. What you see is simulated, but it does show out the porthole window. This craft had portholes. Here is an object, and one of the astronauts goes, "Wow, look at this level. Pass me the camera. You won't believe, look at this." And out the window is Earth. The first time that we, humanity, had seen the Earth from outer space. When I saw that, and that was in it, and that image of Earth from outer space, Earthrise, and a lot of other photos were immediately transmitted back to Earth and became available to all of us. I saw it on the campus of the University of California, Berkeley. I was living close by. I had gone to law school there, and I was a young lawyer for a law firm in San Francisco. When I saw that image, it knocked me for a loop. It really did. Home. I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with it. And it from that point on, I was ready to respond to its needs, Gaia, the needs of our planet, my home, our home. And I had the great good fortune to know Pete McCloskey. He had been a mentor for me when I was an undergraduate and then through law school, and as I launched my legal career. And Pete was in Congress at the time, first year congressman, and he called me one day and said, "Mark, have you heard about this oil spill in Santa Barbara?" I was living in Berkeley, working in San Francisco. "Have you heard about it?" And I said, "Yes, I read about it." And he said, "Well, this is going to launch a whole movement. And I really think you should get down there if you can. Don't you have some family down there?" And I did. My wife's family had some land here in Santa Barbara. So he said, "We are putting together something called the National Environmental Policy Act." I'm writing versions on the House side. And Senator Gaylord Nelson and I are working together on something called environmental teach-in. It was Gaylord Nelson's idea to do this when he flew from Los Angeles to Seattle to give a talk, and in passing over Santa Barbara, looked down and saw the oil bubbling up out of the seabed. So I followed Pete's advice. Pete said, "Get down there, because you can do a lot. This will launch a career for you too." I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I was being prepared as a corporate lawyer, didn't like it. So anyway, I came to Santa Barbara and just fell in with the most wonderful people who, since 1925, when Santa Barbara had to respond to an earthquake that knocked down a lot of the buildings in town, Pearl Chase, Bob Easton, all the names that won't be familiar to you perhaps, but these were really giants of the conservation movement, including David Brower. They were connected to the major figures in the conservation movement. And they were, when I came, I was introduced to Bob Easton, Selma Rubin, Ken Millar, and others who had formed an organization called Santa Barbara Citizens for Environmental Defense. And they were in the process of hiring a lawyer to sue the oil companies and the federal government to stop further drilling until things could get sorted out. An organization called GOO was formed. Bud Bottoms was a mainstay in that effort. And the whole community was just really angry as hornets. I mean, because of all the work that had been done since 1925 to make Santa Barbara a unique, well-planned, and carefully cared for community. Well, oil all over the beaches. Santa Barbara citizens had been asking for hearings to put the oil companies and the federal government to the proof that this would be a safe activity if undertaken the way they planned to do it. Hearings were denied. No, we don't want to have hearings. We need the money. The federal government said, we really want to get these leases, $600 million into our coffers. At that time, remember, you don't remember, but at that time, the Vietnam War was raging. We had already had that terrible year of 1968, where the war began to take the turn, starting to become clear that that was not a winnable war, and it was taking a lot of money. So one of the reasons why the Santa Barbara oil spill occurred was that the federal government was in such a hurry to get revenue to pay for the Vietnam War. So there's a connection between war and environmental quality that was evident way back then. Well, long story short, these organizations and other individuals and other organizations formed together into a coalition called the January 28th Committee. It was my privilege to chair that group, form subcommittees. We worked with the community with the idea that on the first anniversary of the spill, we would have a conference in Santa Barbara that would be a declaration of a community. The Santa Barbara Declaration of Environmental Rights would come out of this conference 1 year after the event. Also, we worked with Pete McCloskey and Senator Nelson and Dennis Hayes, who was hired to be the coordinator for the first Earth Day, still called Environmental Teach-In. And then subsequently, as the date neared for our conference on January 28th, 1970, they changed it to Earth Day. So Pete came, Dennis Hayes came, David Brower, Paul Ehrlich, Senator Cranston. We had, everybody was, they were stumbling over themselves to get to Santa Barbara to take part in this, because it was clear from all the media attention that this was receiving that something big was going to come out of Santa Barbara at this conference, and it did. Earth Day was introduced. After the conference, the conference came and went. We didn't rest. We immediately opened up the nation's second ecology center in Santa Barbara. That became the Community Environmental Council. Paul Rellis, Hal Conklin, Selma Rubin, a whole host of other people I won't mention now. Too many people have been really, really instrumental in this work to mention them all, but they're all Earth Angels. If you want to look at some of that, I have a published a book a couple of years ago, thanks to Nancy and to Isaac, who helped me with it. It's called In Love with Earth, and it tells this story in greater detail. So I think I better be quiet for a bit. And
Well, you raised a lot of good points, and one of the things that that really stuck out to me was the role of media in covering the spill and raising awareness. And I wonder, Isaac or Nancy, if you want to talk about how you see your own role in kind of communicating not only the initial event, but really with the film talking about something more contemporary in what happened in 2018. How do you see the role of media in kind of elevating these issues as they come up, not only here in the United States, but around the world, especially as we start thinking about climate change, and we're starting to see more and more climate events really impacting communities. So, you know, is there lessons from what happened and how the media covered the spill that can be applied in how the media is covering or talking about these issues today? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Shall I take it, Isaac?
Go ahead.
I see a few things. I think it's more powerful to elevate stories of possibility than of despair. That's something like Isaac mentioned earlier, but offering solutions, I think, is key, and providing examples of resilient behavior. And that was kind of a core underlying message that we want people to come home with. You know, the pandemic has really brought this true. We need each other. We need to make sure everybody has food. You want to reach out to your neighbors. Like, these are things that the pandemic has brought home, but we're, you know, every time we have a fire, it's that, you know, you want to make sure that everybody gets the knock on the door when it's time to go. You want to make sure that your infrastructure is set. So the role of the media, one thing is not to overlook it, and it's difficult. This is a difficult time for the media. You know, on one hand, everybody is a citizen journalist with a camera, so you can see things in real time that might otherwise be hidden. And there's something really amazing about that possibility. On the other hand, the traditional media is at a weaker place. I think as a citizen, as well as a media person, that what there is to speak out when you see something, say something, and we can all do that. And when we see somebody who needs something, if we can't provide it, we can put it out there so that others can step in. For example, like, there's this amazing area of land and there's just a few days, but we can put it out there over the next 50 days. Hey, everybody, if you want to save this land in perpetuity to be able to go, you know, do your own rituals there or travel there, like, you know, here's an opportunity. So we can illuminate ways for people to contribute. Everybody just wants to make a difference. You know, that's all anybody wants. Being
Almost
connected, and yeah, maybe some people like to be isolated, especially now but there are many ways to be connected.
I think when you talk about the role of media, I want to add that I think it'd be nice if younger kids have education about being media savvy and really understanding, because media is coming now from everywhere. You have sources that are not true, and everybody really it's a journalist, like Nancy said. Everybody has a camera, so I think it would be nice to have that education coming younger in life. The same thing as environmental stewardship education, that I think the tendency is to have that at a younger age, but I would like to see it even sooner.
Yeah, I think you do raise a really good point there about critically navigating the media landscape nowadays, which is so, while there are many things that carry over from the 1960s around media, but with things like social media out there, There's so much information going around, and with bots and state actors involved, it's so hard to determine without having had some learning or some formal education around it, who to trust as to who is telling you as much of the a true story or as much of the facts as possible. So I appreciated in the film when you mentioned that Union Oil actually received a waiver from the U.S. Geological Survey that allowed it to build the protective casing around the drilling hole that was around 61 feet short of what the federal minimum requirements were at the time. And the waiver was essentially granted because the government felt that the experts in the industry knew what they were talking about, and granted the waiver kind of on those grounds. And of course, mentioning some of the financial incentives that the government had at the time to make sure that this went through. That's a problem that's kind of still stuck around in government and attracting folks to work in public service and regulate industry, is that sometimes you almost get pushed into a category of recruiting from that industry to regulate that industry, because it's hard to get the expertise outside of that, especially with discrepancy in how much you can make in the private versus public sector. And obviously, from what happened as a result of that waiver, there were significant consequences. So are there any lessons that we can pull as to one, value public service and value the expertise that public servants have, but also make sure that the government is actually in a place where it can't, or citizens are holding the government accountable to actually regulate these industries, rather than just say, oh, they know what they're doing, let them go about their business. Because we can see what happens when that occurs, and the rights barriers that were supposed to be put in place were completely let down. Do you have any opinion on that in terms of how do we hold our government accountable to make sure that they're able to actually enforce these rules and regulations and not be giving out waivers just because they feel like there's a knowledge gap between the two?
Well, I think the lawyers in the room probably have more to say than me.
That's what I was going to say. We have laws.
And they have more experience in holding the government accountable than I do. I just tell their story. But I think from my point of view, this comes down to being educated and being involved. And I hope that this is what I wanted to do with this film, is to inspire people to get involved. But the ones with the experience about holding government accountable, raise your hand.
Well, we really need to know the facts in order to exercise our capacity to make laws that are sensible and sufficient. Out of fact comes the law. First, you have to know really what's the story, what really is the story. Then you can utilize ages-old doctrines and new doctrines of law to address those facts. But one of the things we really learned, Nixon was a liar. He lied like crazy about the Vietnam War with those consequences. Johnson, I'm afraid, was a liar about the Vietnam War. And then Trump was a liar about everything. So for me, the importance of the media in whatever form it takes these days, and I love all this, but that's why I love Nancy and Isaac so much. They are media people, and they are truth tellers. They are dedicated to describing the story, giving us the information that we need in order to be responsible stewards, as Mark says. We absolutely need to know what the facts really are. and there are ways, the legal system has ways, we don't want to go into a long lecture about it. But one of the good things about our system is that citizens can sue the government in court, take them to court. I don't believe you. I want to see the records. I want hearings. So we have means, we do have means, thank goodness, to get to the truth. It can be very difficult, be very expensive. And that's why Mark, you heard him say, public interest environmental lawyers.
Mhm.
These are, and I'm one too. And we don't have, we don't take fees. We choose cases for which the community can be counted on to support. Those are the issues we reflect carefully, not just about, well, how much money can we make? We don't think about that. We make modest amount of money compared to most lawyers. And we have boards of directors who oversee the operation, is that we take as public interest lawyers. And Mark, what do you have to say about this?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah, and thanks for putting it out there. I have to say I feel a little jaded, but the fourth estate, the importance of the media to uncovering and exposing atrocities and malfeasance, misdeeds is fundamental to our democracy. And unfortunately, I believe that there has been an intentional effort to erode the credibility of the media. Probably few could dispute that. I mean, we're in troubled times because the way our government works, the legislation, the lawmaking, the judicial litigating, the agencies' decision making, all of those processes are impacted a lot by interests and the effect of money. So like the Unical engineer and the 1970s USGS inspector say, that's okay. I mean, those imbalances in influence have only become exacerbated, and as wealth is concentrating with just fewer and fewer people and corporations are becoming more and more powerful, they're hiring more and more lobbyists to misplace the legislative prerogative. And so why can't we regulate guns in a culture where people die daily, kids die daily? Politically, we can't do that because of the power of their money on the legislative process. And then, in the judicial arena and the litigation arena, there are no easy cases. All these cases are hard because they're fought bitterly by the other side. And even if they're wrong, they will try and create that shadow of a doubt. I mean, yesterday's verdict with Chauvin was just, we're elated that the system actually worked. And the reality is, it's mortifying that we actually got to this point, that it has to be that extreme before, they convicted him. Like so we're really in the stew pot around all these issues, the confluence of power and money and misinformation and political gerrymandering and the interests of the moneyed and the powerful to maintain their status and their control over things.
Mhm.
Has led to a campaign to erode truth and to create questions as to the integrity of the media and the other sources of the other ingredients of our democracy. They've impugned government and the ability by bringing incompetence in to do things. So we have, FEMA run by people who don't know how to deal with emergencies, and so then you have a Katrina come in and people die unnecessarily. you know, and then you create distrust to the point where people in society won't take a vaccine that's necessary to protect the entire society. If we're not all taking it, everybody's going to continue to be vulnerable. So it's really an erosion of the core tenets of democracy that I'm sorry to be pessimistic about this, but
it
man,
raises
oh
a good
man, we
point.
got some work to do.
It raises a good point, right? Because I've always heard the saying, right? History may not repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme, right? And so what I'm thinking of in the film in particular is seeing those student activists who occupied the wharf in protests of the oil demonstrations, and even in Earth Month here, and our theme for Earth Month is climate action and student activism around confronting this climate crisis that is affecting not only us here in the United States, but everyone around the world. And, you know, we're seeing that activism, we're seeing demonstrations. You know, I was at the climate march on Washington, you know, and so, you know, and we're seeing some pushback on those demonstrations as well, just as those students back then saw those pushback not only from industry, but from elsewhere and the powers that be. So, you know, what's the message here for some of our students who are seeing the similar developments, fearful of institution and institutional powers, but have an understanding that they need to fight for what they believe is right, fight for a better climate, not only for their local community, but for the global community as well. And I was wondering what you thought those parallels were, and if you have any messages for students who are looking to really really change the world, as so many of you have done.
As John Lewis said, it's time to make some good trouble. Now is the time.
Yeah.
All citizens, now is the time. Do not be quiet. You don't want to be the one who says they came for somebody else, but it didn't matter to me. No, now is the time to make some trouble, good trouble.
And you know, love, joy to the world, you know, do what you love, protect what you love, and do it lovingly. You know, we really have the greatest resource as people, if we'll just let our love lead us, let our hearts inform our intelligence, and insist on virtue, insist on it.
And integrity.
Yeah.
I think that young people are in a especially powerful place. You know, you guys know how to use social media. You know how to use it for good, how to get together. I think just don't be afraid and just do what you know how to do and do it more.
And with all your heart.
But I wanted to correct, when I was speaking about media, I think media is very powerful too. I didn't mean to put down all media. I think it's also very important to support the media that is doing in-depth journalism and not just clickbait, and really support those newspapers. And because, you know, you see Bob Solan in the film. Bob Solan really, there's something that I didn't make a highlight in the movie, but the day of the oil spill, there's a news clipping that I found at the UCSB library that says that Unocal had record profits, and it was published, the article was published the day of the spill, which is so ironic. But that was Bob Solan. That was one person that wasn't afraid to stand up to the oil companies, and that had an editor that wasn't afraid for him to stand up to the oil companies, even though they were like baiting him with appreciation and in a way, like trying to direct his journalism in a way. I mean, just like many companies do today, they're trying to control what is said about them. But he wasn't afraid. So just don't be afraid would be my comment. There's nothing to lose. We don't have a planet B.
The other thing that I'd offer around all this is that, with change comes opportunity. And we are now, politically in this moment, we've got our 2 years. And if you look back at the last 2 Democratic administrations, they had the same environment for 2 years. And I think Biden is very clear that, okay, this is the time, we're just going to go for it. And I think to have youth supporting that and the whole society just saying, nope, there's rules about how things used to be, but those rules, I mean, it's so many. What Trump brought us was just a willingness to flout convention. And that works both ways, the pendulum metaphor. But so with the really scary times that we're in comes an incredible opportunity to make the kind of fundamental changes that I think many of us have been arguing for, lobbying for, trying to articulate or even develop for the last 40 years. Well, we're getting a little bit to that now or never moment. And so with that, recognize that opportunity that we have from that can take us more than just let's fix this little problem. It's like, no, let's figure a way to fix all these problems, because that's really what we need to do. And so, thinking big, that's been the mantra for this Foothills campaign. It was this, we tried to do something that nobody's ever done before and faster than anybody's ever done in our community. And oh, well, a bunch of us just said, damn straight, we're going to go for it. And so that's really, I think, the spirit that needs to be brought. And, when I was 18, that's what I was doing too. So I'm not that way anymore, but I so much rely on the folks that are young and are at a different place in their lives to go ahead and step up, grab for that ring and go for it, because that's the thing that's going to make the difference.
And network with your peers. And I just wanted to apologize because I wanted to have David Pello and other people, Michelle Sevilla and other people in the film in this round table. But tomorrow is the virtual Earth Day in Santa Barbara, and a lot of people have been very busy with that. But you can actually join if you go to sbearthday.org. You can see many great presentations, including Annie. Help me.
Annie Leonard
Annie Leonard in
of
conversation.
Greenpeace.
And Sigrid, who is in the film, is the head of the CEC. And David Pello, and a lot of other great people. There is also going to be a lot of Food Action Network. I know you're food sustainability. Nancy and I have been producing several Food Action Network films for Santa Barbara County, and there will be, some of them are going to premiere over the next 3 days. So if you can, there's a calendar, so you don't have to go to all of it, but it's from noon to about 6 every day for the next 3 days. And there's a lot of great content with a lot more diverse people that I was able to bring together today. But thank you.
Also, we're putting on the Green Film Festival with Santa Barbara Earth Day, and it's going to have a selection of about 20 films, including Better Together. So if you didn't have a chance to see it already, I think the link you have will still work, but it's also going to be available on sbearthday.org. And, they have incredible content there. It's going to be up on that website for an entire month. So even if you miss the live events that they're having for the next 3 days, you can go back and see them recorded. And it's really going to be worth checking out that website. So thank you. Thank you for following up on it and seeing the film fest if you do. And thank you for watching this film Better Together and for letting us know how it is for you. We look forward to your comments.
Absolutely. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're running towards the end of our schedule timing, but I wanted to say thank you all for giving us your time to have this discussion about such a wonderful film and such an important event in the environmental movement, especially that it's highly relevant to what's going on right now. And the message and the hopefulness was very powerful. And I remember, although was thinking when I saw the film and seeing what happened in Santa Barbara. So I'm Puerto Rican by background, and I was thinking of how the island came together after Hurricane Maria, and thinking of how that same sense of community existed in Santa Barbara, still exists in Santa Barbara, and still will exist in other communities that get impacted by these climate events. So thank you for your hopeful story of your story of optimism and activism, and letting people know that they can punch way above their weight class when it comes to these larger institutions. But I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for attending and for giving up your time, and I appreciate it, and for your work and ongoing work. I hope to join in that effort as time goes on. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And is there any, Aaron, do you want to close up with or say anything before we let go?
Well, of course, happy Earth Day, Earth Month, Earth Year. And I'm going to let us all kind of leave on one really poignant note that someone said, let our love lead us. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one, everyone.
Okay, bye.